Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. The emergency alert screamed through Nexus Station's medical bay, its harsh red glow painting the sterile walls in warning colors. Dr. Sarah Chen looked up from her patient files. Her dark eyes immediately focused as the automated voice began its urgent announcement. Code red medical emergency. Incoming critical patient. Species Vorthak. Condition: severe trauma, life-threatening injuries. All medical personnel report to Emergency Bay 7 immediately. Sarah watched as the other doctors and nurses in the medical station froze. The bustling activity that normally filled the multi-species medical facility came to an abrupt halt. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Equipment clattered to floors as hands went limp. Even the usually confident Dr. Zilnith, a renowned Altarian surgeon, took an involuntary step backward. "Did it say Vorthak?" whispered Nurse Kretal, her blue-scaled hands trembling as she clutched her datapad. They cannot be serious. The Vorthak were legends of terror throughout the galaxy, standing nearly 3 meters tall, with razor-sharp claws that could slice through starship hull plating, and teeth designed to crush the bones of any creature unfortunate enough to cross their path. They were the apex predators of the Outer Rim, feared even by species that had mastered faster-than-light travel centuries before humans had learned to make fire. Sarah had never seen a Vorthak in person, but she had studied their anatomy during her xenobiology courses at the Terran Medical Academy. Their physiology was fascinating from a scientific perspective, even if their reputation was terrifying from every other angle. Triple-chambered hearts pumped acidic blood through reinforced vessels. Their skeletal structure was denser than titanium alloy. Their nervous system operated on bioelectric frequencies that could disrupt most standard medical equipment. "I am not treating that thing," announced Dr. Threx, the head of surgery. His insectoid features clicked nervously as he spoke. "My insurance does not cover being eaten by patients." "Same here," agreed Dr. Verena, backing toward the exit. "The Vorthak have killed more medical personnel than any other species in the galaxy. They do not understand the concept of healing. To them, weakness means prey." Sarah looked around the room in disbelief. These were some of the finest medical professionals in the galaxy, beings who had sworn oaths to preserve life regardless of species, circumstance, or personal risk. Yet they were all backing away from their duty because of fear. "You cannot all be serious," she said, standing up from her desk. "Someone is dying out there. Someone who would happily tear us apart the moment they regain consciousness," replied Dr. Zilnith. "The Vorthak do not distinguish between friend and enemy when injured. Their pain response triggers aggressive behavior that makes them attack anything nearby." The emergency announcement repeated, more urgent this time. "Critical patient arrival in 30 seconds. Medical team required immediately." One by one, the alien doctors began filing out of the room, making excuses about other patients, equipment malfunctions, and sudden illness. Sarah watched in growing horror as the medical bay emptied. These beings were abandoning a patient based purely on species prejudice and fear. "Where are you all going?" she called after them. "To preserve our lives," Dr. Threx replied without looking back. "Let the Vorthak medical facilities handle their own kind. We are not equipped for such dangerous patients." Sarah stood alone in the medical bay as the transport arrived outside, through the reinforced windows. She could see the emergency shuttlecraft, its engines still glowing from rapid flight. Warning lights flashed around the landing pad, and she could hear the mechanical whine of the docking clamps engaging. The patient was here, and there was no medical team to receive them. She grabbed her emergency medical kit and headed for the airlock. Her hands shook slightly as she entered her authorization code, but her resolve was firm. She had not spent 8 years training to become a xenobiologist and combat medic, just to walk away when someone needed help. The airlock cycled open, and Sarah stepped onto the landing pad. The shuttle's rear cargo bay was already opening, revealing the most massive being she had ever seen outside of documentaries. The Vorthak lay strapped to an emergency medical gurney, unconscious but still radiating an aura of barely contained power. Even injured and sedated, the creature was magnificent in a terrifying way. Its dark gray hide was marked with distinctive scarlet patterns that seemed to pulse with its heartbeat. 4 arms ended in claws that looked like they could tear through her medical equipment without effort. Its elongated skull housed a brain that was likely more intelligent than most of the doctors who had just fled in terror. But what struck Sarah most was not the creature's fearsome appearance, but the extent of its injuries. Burns covered nearly 40% of its body. One arm hung at an unnatural angle, clearly shattered. Puncture wounds leaked dark blood onto the gurney. Whatever had happened to this being, it had fought for its life and barely survived. "Are you the medical team?" asked the shuttle pilot, a nervous-looking Centauri wearing a pressure suit. "Because if not, I need to get out of here fast." "I am the medical team," Sarah replied, grabbing the gurney's control handles. "Help me get the patient to the emergency bay." The pilot hesitated. "You are human, and you are treating this alone?" "Unless you have a medical degree I do not know about," Sarah said, already guiding the gurney toward the medical facility. "Yes, I am treating this alone." As they moved the massive patient through the corridors of the station, Sarah could see other beings pressing themselves against the walls, staying as far away as possible. Some watched through windows with expressions of disbelief. Others simply fled. Word was already spreading through the station's communication networks. The human doctor was treating the Vorthak alone. In Emergency Bay 7, Sarah began her initial assessment. The creature's vital signs were unlike anything she had encountered, but her xenobiology training guided her through the unfamiliar readings. The bioelectric interference was manageable with proper shielding. The acidic blood required specialized containers, but the medical bay was equipped for such situations. Most importantly, despite its fearsome reputation, the patient was just another injured being who needed help. Sarah rolled up her sleeves and began to work. She had a life to save, and she would not let fear or prejudice stop her from doing her job. The galaxy might consider the Vorthak to be monsters, but to her, this was simply a patient who needed medical attention. Outside, word of the human doctor's actions began to spread beyond the medical station, carried by the galaxy's information networks to every corner of civilized space. Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. Sarah worked through the night, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was attempting. The Vorthak's injuries were severe, requiring every piece of medical knowledge she had accumulated during her years of training. Burns covered the creature's torso where some kind of energy weapon had struck repeatedly. The shattered arm would need surgical reconstruction. Most concerning were the internal injuries that her scans revealed. The creature's triple-chambered heart was struggling, two of the chambers showing signs of trauma-induced arrhythmia. Sarah had to constantly adjust her medical equipment to compensate for the bioelectric interference the Vorthak's nervous system generated. Standard monitors flickered and failed, forcing her to use backup systems and manual measurements. Computer cross-reference. Vorthak cardiovascular repair protocols with available surgical options, she said while carefully cleaning the worst of the burns. Warning: Vorthak medical data is limited due to species isolation. Available protocols are theoretical only. Recommend consultation with specialist, the medical AI responded. The specialists all left, Sarah muttered, applying a specialized healing gel designed for non-human physiology. We work with what we have. The challenge was not just medical but psychological. Everything in Sarah's human instinct screamed danger when she looked at her patient. The creature's claws, even retracted in unconsciousness, were longer than her fingers. Its jaw could easily accommodate her entire head. The muscle definition visible beneath its hide suggested strength that could break her bones without effort. Yet as she worked, Sarah began to notice details that contradicted the monster image the galaxy held of the Vorthak. The scarring on the creature's hide told a story of numerous battles, but also of survival and healing. The care taken with the pattern marking suggested a culture that valued aesthetics alongside function. Most telling were the small scars near the creature's primary eyes, precise and deliberate, clearly ritualistic rather than combat-related. Hours passed as Sarah performed surgery after surgery. She reconstructed the shattered arm using a combination of bone fusion techniques and biocompatible metal reinforcement. The burns required skin grafts using synthetic tissue, cultured from the creature's own cellular samples. The heart surgery was the most delicate, requiring her to work around the bioelectric interference while repairing damaged tissue in 2 of the 3 chambers. During a brief break to rest her hands, Sarah found herself studying her patient's face. Even in unconsciousness, there was an intelligence there that the galaxy chose to ignore. The Vorthak were not mindless killers as the stereotypes suggested. Their cranial capacity indicated a brain comparable to the most intelligent species in the galaxy. "Why does everyone fear you so much?" she asked the sleeping creature. "What have your people done to earn such hatred?" The medical bay's communication system crackled to life, startling her from her thoughts. Station Commander Vrex's voice filled the room, tense with barely controlled panic. "Dr. Chen, report your status immediately. We have received multiple requests to evacuate the medical section." Sarah sighed and activated the communication panel. "The patient is stable but critical. Surgery is ongoing. Evacuation is not necessary. Dr. Chen, I must insist that you transfer the patient to a containment facility. The other doctors are refusing to return to the medical bay while that creature is present. You are compromising the station's ability to treat other patients." "Commander, this being is not that creature. It is a patient under my care. I will not abandon medical ethics because others choose to act on prejudice." There was a long pause before the commander responded. "Dr. Chen, I admire your dedication, but you do not understand what you are dealing with. The Vorthak are not like other species. When they awaken from trauma, they attack indiscriminately. You are putting yourself and this entire station at risk." Sarah looked at her patient, noting the way the creature's breathing had stabilized over the past few hours. The burns were healing well with treatment. The reconstructed arm was already showing signs of successful bone fusion. This was not a monster. This was a success story. "Commander, I have been monitoring the patient's vital signs continuously. There are no indications of aggressive behavioral patterns. The sedatives are properly balanced for the species' metabolism. The patient will awaken gradually and without distress. Dr. Chen, you are basing this on theoretical knowledge. No one has ever successfully treated a Vorthak in a non-Vorthak facility. There is no precedent for what you are attempting." "Then we are creating a precedent," Sarah replied firmly. "This patient will receive the same standard of care I would provide to any other being." As she spoke, Sarah noticed a subtle change in the creature's bioelectric patterns. The readings were becoming more organized, more coherent. The patient was beginning to emerge from unconsciousness. This was the moment everyone feared, when the Vorthak would supposedly revert to its predatory instincts and attack everything around it. Sarah checked the restraining system one more time, not because she feared the patient, but because sudden movement could damage the delicate surgical work she had performed. The medical restraints were designed to prevent injury to the patient, not to the medical staff. "Commander, the patient is beginning to regain consciousness. I need to focus on monitoring the recovery process. Dr. Chen, evacuate immediately. That is a direct order." Sarah looked at her patient, then at the communication panel. "I am sorry, Commander, but I cannot follow that order. My duty as a medical professional supersedes station protocol when it comes to patient care." She switched off the communication system and turned her full attention to the awakening Vorthak. The creature's primary eyes were beginning to flutter open, revealing irises of deep amber that seemed to glow with their own light. The bioelectric patterns on her monitors spiked as the creature's nervous system fully activated. This was the moment of truth. According to every expert in the galaxy, she should be running for her life. According to her medical training, she should be monitoring her patients' recovery and ensuring they were comfortable and oriented. Sarah chose her medical training. "Hello," she said softly, her voice calm despite the rapid beating of her own heart. "You are safe. You are in a medical facility. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen, and I have been treating your injuries." The creature's massive head turned toward her voice, amber eyes focusing with obvious difficulty. Sarah could see intelligence returning to those eyes, consciousness replacing the void of sedated sleep. The Vorthak tried to speak, but only a low rumbling sound emerged. Sarah quickly reached for a hydration system designed for the creature's physiology. "Do not try to talk yet. Your throat was damaged by smoke inhalation. This will help." The creature accepted the treatment, its actions deliberate and controlled rather than aggressive. As Sarah watched, she realized that everything the galaxy believed about the Vorthak might be based on misunderstanding and fear rather than fact. Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. The Vorthak's eyes remained fixed on Sarah as consciousness fully returned. She could see the creature's mind working, processing its surroundings, analyzing the situation. The bioelectric readings showed patterns that reminded her of deep contemplation rather than aggressive preparation. This was a thinking being, not a mindless predator. "Where The word came out as a deep rumble, barely recognizable but clearly an attempt at galactic standard. The creature tried again, its voice gradually becoming clearer. "Where am I?" "Nexus Station, Emergency Medical Bay 7, Sarah replied, checking the creature's IV lines and monitoring systems. "You were brought here with severe injuries. Do you remember what happened?" The Vorthak's massive head moved slowly, a gesture that seemed to indicate uncertainty. Sarah noticed that even this simple movement was carefully controlled, avoiding any sudden motions that might alarm her. The creature was being deliberately non-threatening. "Ship attacked. Pirates. Fell from sky." Each word required obvious effort, but the creature persisted in communicating. "Thought I would die." Sarah felt a chill as she realized the implications. This being had been the victim of a pirate attack, probably left for dead and somehow managed to survive long enough for rescue. The injuries she had treated were not the result of aggressive behavior, but of defending against criminals. "The injuries are healing well," she said, making notes on her medical pad. "Your arm required extensive reconstruction, and there was significant damage to your cardiovascular system. You will need several more days of recovery before you can be released." The creature's amber eyes studied her with obvious intelligence. "You are human." "Yes, I am human. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. The others, they left when I arrived." Sarah paused in her work, surprised by the perceptiveness of the observation. "How did you know that?" "I can smell fear. Very strong when I was brought in. Now only you remain." The creature's voice was growing stronger, though it still carried an underlying rumble that spoke of vocal cords designed for sounds no human throat could produce. "Why did you stay?" The question was simple, but Sarah found herself struggling to answer. How could she explain that she had acted on principles that seemed to be foreign to every other medical professional on the station? "You needed medical attention." "That is what I do," she said finally. The creature was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those unusual amber eyes. "My name is Kethvar." "I was grateful. It is my job, Kethvar. Any doctor should have done the same, but they did not. Only you." Kethvar shifted slightly, testing the limits of the medical restraints. "These bonds, they are to protect your work, not to contain me." Sarah was startled by the insight. "How did you know that?" "I have been wounded before. I know the difference between medical restraints and prison bonds." Kethvar's expression seemed to soften, though it was difficult to read emotion on such an alien face. "You trust me not to harm you. Should I not trust you?" The question hung in the air between them. Sarah realized she was having a conversation that no one in the galaxy thought was possible. According to every expert, Vorthaks were incapable of rational discussion with other species. They were supposed to be driven by instinct and aggression, not capable of gratitude or philosophical debate. "My people have a saying," Kethvar said slowly. "The strongest weapon is the one that chooses not to strike." "You are very strong, Dr. Chen." Before Sarah could respond, the medical bay's doors burst open. Station security forces stormed in, weapons drawn and aimed at Kethvar. Commander Vrex followed behind them, his face grim with determination. "Dr. Chen, step away from the creature immediately," the commander ordered. "Commander, you are disrupting medical treatment," Sarah replied, not moving from her position beside the bed. "This patient is recovering from surgery and needs monitoring. The creature is conscious and poses an immediate threat. Security protocols require containment." Kethvar had not moved at the sight of the weapons, but Sarah could see tension in the creature's posture. The bioelectric readings on her monitors spiked, showing stress responses that were clearly related to the threatening situation, rather than any aggressive intentions. "Kethvar is not threatening anyone," Sarah said firmly. "Look at the medical readings. The stress response you are seeing is because you burst in here with weapons drawn. Dr. Chen, you do not understand what you are dealing with. That thing could tear you apart before security could stop it." "That thing has a name, and he is my patient," Sarah replied, her voice hard with anger. "And if anyone is creating a dangerous situation here, it is you." Commander Vrex looked at the medical monitors, clearly confused by what he was seeing. The readings showed stress but not aggression, fear but not rage. The patterns were not what anyone expected from a conscious Vorthak. "Commander," Kethvar spoke, his voice carrying easily through the medical bay, "I mean no harm to Dr. Chen or to your station. I ask only to heal and to leave when I am able." The security team flinched at the sound of the creature's voice, weapons trembling in their grips. Commander Vrek stared in obvious shock. In all his years of commanding Nexus Station, he had never heard of a Vorthak speaking directly to station personnel, much less making peaceful requests. You can talk," he stammered. "I have always been able to talk," Keithvar replied with what might have been amusement. "Perhaps no one has bothered to listen." Sarah looked around the room, seeing the confusion and fear on the faces of the security personnel. These beings had come prepared for a monster, and instead found a rational individual having a medical consultation with his doctor. "Commander, I suggest you lower your weapons," she said quietly. "You are frightening my patient, and stress is bad for his recovery." Slowly, reluctantly, Commander Vrek signaled for the security team to lower their weapons. The tension in the room decreased noticeably, and the bioelectric readings on Sarah's monitors returned to more normal patterns. "This is unprecedented," the commander said. "We have no protocols for dealing with a cooperative Vorthak." "Perhaps," Kethvar suggested, "you should develop some." The moment hung in the air, charged with possibilities that no one had previously considered. Sarah looked from her patient to the station commander, realizing that they were at a crossroads that could change everything. For the first time in galactic history, a Vorthak was requesting peaceful coexistence rather than demonstrating aggressive behavior. The question was whether the galaxy would be wise enough to listen. Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. Over the next 3 days, word of the unprecedented situation at Nexus Station spread throughout the galaxy. News feeds carried stories of the human doctor treating a Vorthak, the peaceful conversation with station security, and the complete absence of the violence everyone expected. Medical universities began requesting detailed reports. Xenobiological institutes demanded access to the medical data. Most surprising of all, several Vorthak vessels had been detected at the edges of the system, maintaining position but making no aggressive moves. Sarah continued her patient care routine, monitoring Kethavar's healing progress and gradually learning more about his species than any textbook had ever contained. The burns were healing remarkably well, the reconstructed arm was regaining full function, and the cardiovascular repairs had been completely successful. More importantly, she was discovering that almost everything the galaxy believed about the Vorthak was wrong. "Your people are not the mindless predators everyone thinks you are," she observed while checking the surgical sites on Kethvar's arm. "Why does the galaxy have such a distorted view?" Kethvar was quiet for a moment, his amber eyes thoughtful.
"Fear creates its own truth, Dr. Chen. When every interaction begins with weapons drawn and threats made,
The outcome is predictable, but surely there must have been attempts at peaceful contact over the centuries. There have been attempts. They rarely end well. Keithavar shifted on the medical bed, careful not to disturb the monitoring equipment. "My people learn early that other species see us as monsters. When treated as monsters, it is easier to become what they expect." Sarah paused in her work, struck by the profound sadness in those words. That is a terrible way to live. It is the way we have lived for generations. Until now. The implications of that statement were staggering. Sarah was beginning to realize that her simple decision to treat an injured patient might be reshaping centuries of interspecies relations. "Tell me about your people," she said, settling into the chair beside the bed. "The real story, not the legends." Kethavar's expression grew distant, as if looking across vast spaces to memories of home. "We are explorers, Dr. Chen, scientists and philosophers. Our ships travel the outer reaches of the galaxy, mapping new systems, studying phenomena that other species cannot survive close enough to examine. We are builders of great works, creators of art that spans continents. But the reports of attacks, the violence, defense," Kethvar said simply. "Pirates target our ships because they believe we carry valuable resources. Colonial vessels open fire when they see our approach, assuming hostile intent. We defend ourselves, and the survivors report monster attacks rather than admitting they struck first at peaceful explorers." Sarah felt sick as she began to understand the scope of the misunderstanding. The galaxy has been perpetuating a cycle of violence based on false assumptions. Yes, and my people have grown bitter from it. Many now believe that peaceful contact is impossible, that we are destined to be seen as enemies regardless of our actions. Kethvar looked directly at her. You have shown me otherwise. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Dr. Threx and several other alien medical professionals who had fled when Kethvar first arrived. They entered the medical bay cautiously, clearly nervous but determined to observe the impossible situation. Dr. Chen, Dr. Threx said, his insectoid features twitching with anxiety. We have come to understand, to see if the monster is really talking, Kethvar finished, a note of what might have been humor in his deep voice. Dr. Threx flinched, but maintained his position. We apologize for our previous behavior. Our training did not prepare us for this situation. Your training was based on incomplete information, Sarah replied diplomatically. Perhaps it is time to update that training. Dr. Zilnith stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. If you would permit it, we would like to learn more about Vorthak physiology. Your recovery has proceeded at a rate that challenges our understanding of xenobiology. Kethvar considered the request carefully. I will permit examination if you promise to use the knowledge to help others of my kind, who may require medical attention in the future. The alien doctors exchanged glances of amazement. Not only was the Vorthak allowing examination, he was negotiating terms that would benefit his entire species. This was behavior that contradicted everything they had been taught. Over the following hours, Sarah found herself in the unique position of facilitating the first collaborative medical study between Vorthak and galactic medical professionals. Kethvar patiently answered questions about his physiology, explained the function of bioelectric organs that had previously been misunderstood, and provided insights into Vorthak medicine that revolutionized the understanding of his species. The triple-chambered heart is not just for redundancy, he explained, as Dr. Zilnith ran detailed scans. Each chamber serves a different function during our deep space exploration. We can survive in environments that would kill most species. And the bioelectric interference? Asked Dr. Threx, studying the readings with fascination. Communication and navigation. Our ships are designed to interface with our bioelectric signatures. We can pilot vessels with thought alone and communicate across vast distances without technological assistance. Sarah watched the exchange with growing amazement. In a few hours, Kethvar had provided more useful scientific information than centuries of combat encounters and autopsies. The potential for cooperation between the species was enormous. There is something else you should know, Kethvar said as the formal examinations concluded. The ships at the edge of your system. They are here because of me. Commander Vrex, who had been monitoring the medical bay, immediately tensed. Are they planning an attack? They are here to observe. My survival and treatment by non-Vorthak medical personnel is unprecedented. If peaceful cooperation is truly possible, it will change everything for my people. Sarah realized the enormous responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders. Her simple act of medical compassion was being watched by an entire species as a test of whether coexistence with the galaxy was possible. What happens next? She asked. Kethvar's amber eyes held hope for the first time since she had met him. That depends on whether your people are ready to see us as something other than monsters. The galaxy was about to find out. Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. On the 5th day of Kethvar's recovery, everything changed. Sarah arrived at the medical bay to find Commander Vrex waiting with a grim expression and a data pad filled with urgent communications. Dr. Chen, we have a problem. 3 more ships arrived during the night cycle. The Galactic Council has issued an emergency session order. There are demands from 12 different species for the immediate transfer of your patient to a maximum security containment facility. Sarah looked through the medical bay windows to where Kethvar was carefully practicing mobility exercises, testing the strength of his reconstructed arm. The sight of the massive being moving with deliberate gentleness had become familiar to her. But she realized that to the rest of the galaxy, he still represented their worst fears. Have they provided medical justification for the transfer? She asked, reviewing Kethvar's charts on her datapad. Medical justification is not their concern. This has become a political issue. The presence of Vorthak ships in our system has triggered defense alerts across 3 sectors. Some species are calling for preemptive military action. Sarah felt her heart sink as she realized the magnitude of what was happening. Her patient's recovery had become the center of an interstellar crisis that could lead to war. What does the Council want specifically? They want to meet with you, your patient, and representatives from the Vorthak ships. The session has been scheduled for tomorrow. Dr. Chen, I need you to understand the pressure we are under. If this situation escalates, Nexus Station could become a battleground. Kethvar approached them, moving carefully but with obvious strength. His recovery had been remarkable, but Sarah could see tension in his bioelectric patterns that indicated he was aware of the growing crisis. Dr. Chen, I have received communications from my people, he said. They are concerned about my extended absence and the lack of hostile response from your station. Some believe this is a trap. Is it? Commander Vrex asked bluntly. No, but my people have learned to be suspicious of apparent kindness. Too many of our explorers have disappeared after accepting invitations to peaceful meetings. Sarah looked between her patient and the station commander, realizing they were balanced on a knife's edge between peace and war. What do you suggest, Kethvar? I suggest we meet with your Galactic Council, but not as prisoner and guards, as equals seeking understanding. Commander Vrex shook his head. The Council will never agree to that. They see you as too dangerous for an equal meeting. Then we will prove them wrong, Sarah said firmly. I will accompany Kethvar to the Council meeting as his medical advisor. If they want to treat him as a prisoner, they will have to go through me first. The Council meeting took place aboard the diplomatic vessel Unity, a massive ship designed to accommodate the various environmental needs of dozens of species. Sarah had never been in such an imposing setting, surrounded by representatives from across the galaxy, all focused intently on her and her patient. Kethvar entered the chamber with dignity despite the obvious fear his presence created. Several Council members actually fled their seats when they saw him, and the security presence was overwhelming. Sarah stayed close to his side, her medical scanner active and monitoring his stress levels. Distinguished Council members, Kethvar began, his deep voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. I come before you not as a conqueror or threat, but as a patient grateful for the medical care I have received at Nexus Station. The Centauri representative, Council Speaker Dexron, activated his communication panel. We have reports that you are holding Dr. Chen against her will, using her as a shield to prevent justified defensive action against your species. Sarah stepped forward before Kethvar could respond. Councillor Dexron, I speak as a free citizen of the Terran Medical Union. I am here by my own choice as Kethavar's attending physician. No one is holding me against my will. Dr. Chen, you cannot understand the danger you are in, interrupted the Altarian delegate. The Vorthak are inherently violent. Your patient's peaceful behavior is clearly an act designed to lower our defenses. Council members, Sarah replied, her voice steady despite her nervousness. I have spent 5 days in close contact with Kethvar. I have monitored his bioelectric patterns, analyzed his stress responses, and observed his behavior in various situations. I can state with medical certainty that his peaceful demeanor is genuine. The Rigelian representative activated a holographic display showing ship movements near the station. Then explain the military vessels your patient's people have positioned near Nexus Station. If their intentions are peaceful, why the show of force? Kethvar answered before Sarah could speak. Because, honored council members, my people are prepared for betrayal. We have learned through bitter experience that gatherings like this often end with our representatives being imprisoned or killed. The ships are there to ensure safe passage home, nothing more. And if we refuse to let you leave? Asked the Andorian delegate. Then my people will assume I have been killed and they will respond accordingly, Kethvar replied calmly. But if I return safely, carrying word of the kindness I have received, it will begin a new chapter in our relationship with the galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the implications of his words sank in. The council was being offered a choice between perpetual conflict and the possibility of peace. But the decision required trust that no one was prepared to give. What guarantees can you offer that your people will honor peaceful agreements? Speaker Dexron asked. What guarantees can you offer that yours will? Kethvar responded. Peace cannot be built on guarantees, only on mutual respect and understanding. Dr. Chen has shown my people that such understanding is possible. Sarah realized that the entire galaxy was looking to her for guidance, waiting for her assessment of whether the risk of peace was worth taking. She thought about the gentle way Kethvar had accepted treatment, his gratitude for simple medical care, and his obvious intelligence and dignity. "Council members," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber, "I have seen what happens when we act on fear instead of knowledge. 5 days ago, every medical professional on Nexus Station fled rather than treat an injured patient. I chose to stay because my medical oath required it. What I found was not a monster, but a person deserving of the same care and respect I would give to any other being." The chamber remained silent, waiting for her conclusion. If we want peace with the Vorthak people, it begins with treating them as people rather than threats. Kethavar has given us that opportunity. The question is whether we are wise enough to take it. Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. The Galactic Council chamber remained tense as the representatives debated in hushed voices through their private communication channels. Sarah could see the fear and uncertainty on their faces as they struggled with a decision that could reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. Beside her, Kethavar waited with remarkable patience, his bioelectric readings showing calm despite the hostile atmosphere surrounding them. Council Speaker Dexron finally called for order. "The Council will hear from the Vorthak Fleet Commander before making any final decisions. We have received a request for direct communication." A large holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, revealing the interior of what was clearly a Vorthak ship. The being who appeared was even larger than Kethavar, with distinctive gold markings across his dark hide and amber eyes that seemed to look directly through the display at each council member. "I am Fleet Commander Jekthal," the figure announced, his voice carrying the same deep resonance as Kethavar's, but with an additional note of authority that filled the chamber. "I speak for the Vorthak exploration fleets." Several council members shifted nervously in their seats. This was the first time in galactic history that a Vorthak military leader had addressed the council directly. "Commander Jekthal," Speaker Dexron replied formally, "we are honored by your communication. We understand you have concerns about the treatment of your representative." "My concerns are not about treatment," the fleet commander replied, his eyes moving to focus on Sarah and Kethavar. "Dr. Chen has provided medical care that exceeds anything my people have received from galactic civilization. My concerns are about what happens next." "What do you mean?" asked the Rigelian representative. "For 300 cycles, my people have been hunted, attacked, and killed by species represented in this council. We have defended ourselves, and each act of defense has been used as justification for greater aggression against us. This pattern ends here, today, with this decision." The holographic fleet commander's gaze swept across the assembled council members. "Kethavar has shown that peaceful cooperation is possible. Dr. Chen has proven that not all galactic citizens view my people as monsters to be destroyed. The question before you is simple. Will you choose the path of continued conflict, or will you choose peace?" Councillor Veltrath of the consortium spoke up. "Commander, what assurances can you provide that the Vorthak will cease all aggressive actions if we agree to peaceful relations?" "I can provide the same assurances you can provide that your people will cease aggressive actions against mine," Fleet Commander Jekthal replied. "None. Peace is not built on assurances, it is built on choices made moment by moment, day by day, year by year." The Altarian delegate activated his communication panel. "Commander, our records show numerous Vorthak attacks on peaceful vessels over the past decades. How do you explain these incidents?" "I explain them the same way you explain the attacks on Vorthak exploration ships by Altarian military vessels," the fleet commander replied calmly, "as responses to perceived threats that escalated beyond reason. When you attack first and ask questions later, you should expect defensive responses." Sarah watched the exchange with growing understanding. Both sides had been trapped in a cycle of violence based on fear and misunderstanding, with each act of aggression justifying the next. Breaking that cycle required someone to take the first step toward trust. "Council members," she interjected, "I request permission to speak as a neutral medical observer." Speaker Dexron nodded. "The council recognizes Dr. Chen." Sarah stood, aware that her next words could determine the future of interstellar relations. "During my treatment of Kethavar, I learned something important about both our species. When we act from fear, we create the very dangers we seek to avoid. When we act from understanding, we discover possibilities we never imagined." She gestured toward Kethavar, who remained seated but watched her with obvious attention. This individual survived a pirate attack, was brought to our station barely alive, and was abandoned by every medical professional except one. Yet he showed no aggression, no hatred, no desire for revenge. Instead, he showed gratitude and offered knowledge that has already advanced our understanding of xenobiology. The chamber was completely silent as she continued. The choice before us is not about whether the Vorthak are dangerous. Every sentient species can be dangerous when threatened. The choice is about whether we want to live in a galaxy where we automatically assume the worst of each other, or whether we want to build something better. Fleet Commander Jekthal's voice resonated through the chamber's speakers. Dr. Chen speaks wisdom that my people would do well to hear. We have grown bitter from centuries of conflict, suspicious of every peaceful gesture, quick to assume hostile intent. Perhaps it is time for us to choose hope instead of fear. Councillor Dexron looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. The council will recess for deliberation. We will reconvene in 1 standard hour with our decision. As the council members filed out to their private consultation chambers, Sarah remained with Kethvar in the main hall. Through the massive windows, they could see the Vorthak ships maintaining their positions at the edge of the system, waiting for word of whether their representative would return safely. "Are you hopeful?" Sarah asked quietly. Kethvar considered the question carefully. "I am cautiously optimistic. Your species has shown a capacity for courage that mine has forgotten. You stayed when others fled. You spoke for understanding when others spoke for conflict. Perhaps that courage is what the galaxy needs to break free from old patterns. And if the Council decides against peaceful relations, then my people will retreat to the outer reaches of space and the galaxy will continue as it has for centuries. But I will carry the memory of your kindness with me, and perhaps someday, others will have the courage to try again." Through the windows, they watched as additional ships arrived in the system, representatives from various species coming to witness what many considered the most important decision in modern galactic history. The outcome would determine whether the galaxy moved toward cooperation or remained locked in cycles of fear and violence. Sarah realized that her simple decision to treat an injured patient had become the catalyst for a moment that would be remembered for generations. The human capacity for compassion was being tested on a galactic scale, and the results would reshape the future for countless species. In 1 hour, they would know whether the galaxy was ready for peace. Every alien medic refused to treat the injured alien apex predator, but the human medic answered the call. The Galactic Council chamber remained tense as the representatives debated in hushed voices through their private communication channels. Sarah could see the fear and uncertainty on their faces as they struggled with a decision that could reshape the political landscape of the galaxy. Beside her, Kethvar waited with remarkable patience, his bioelectric readings showing calm despite the hostile atmosphere surrounding them. Council Speaker Dexron finally called for order. "The Council will hear from the Vorthak Fleet Commander before making any final decisions. We have received a request for direct communication." A large holographic display activated in the center of the chamber, revealing the interior of what was clearly a Vorthak ship. The being who appeared was even larger than Kethvar, with distinctive gold markings across his dark hide and amber eyes that seemed to look directly through the display at each council member. "I am Fleet Commander Jektthal," the figure announced, his voice carrying the same deep resonance as Kethvar's, but with an additional note of authority that filled the chamber. "I speak for the Vorthak exploration fleets." Several council members shifted nervously in their seats. This was the first time in galactic history that a Vorthak military leader had addressed the council directly. "Commander Jektthal," Speaker Dexron replied formally, "we are honored by your communication. We understand you have concerns about the treatment of your representative." "My concerns are not about treatment," the fleet commander replied, his eyes moving to focus on Sarah and Kethvar. "Dr. Chen has provided medical care that exceeds anything my people have received from galactic civilization. My concerns are about what happens next." "What do you mean?" asked the Rigelian representative. "For 300 cycles, my people have been hunted, attacked, and killed by species represented in this council. We have defended ourselves, and each act of defense has been used as justification for greater aggression against us. This pattern ends here, today, with this decision." The holographic fleet commander's gaze swept across the assembled council members. "Kethvar has shown that peaceful cooperation is possible. Dr. Chen has proven that not all galactic citizens view my people as monsters to be destroyed. The question before you is simple. Will you choose the path of continued conflict or will you choose peace? Counselor Veltrath of the consortium spoke up. Commander, what assurances can you provide that the Vorthak will cease all aggressive actions if we agree to peaceful relations? I can provide the same assurances you can provide that your people will cease aggressive actions against mine, Fleet Commander Jekthal replied. None. Peace is not built on assurances, it is built on choices made moment by moment, day by day, year by year. The Altarian delegate activated his communication panel. Commander, our records show numerous Vorthak attacks on peaceful vessels over the past decades. How do you explain these incidents? I explain them the same way you explain the attacks on Vorthak exploration ships by Altarian military vessels, the fleet commander replied calmly, as responses to perceived threats that escalated beyond reason. When you attack first and ask questions later, you should expect defensive responses. Sarah watched the exchange with growing understanding. Both sides had been trapped in a cycle of violence based on fear and misunderstanding, with each act of aggression justifying the next. Breaking that cycle required someone to take the first step toward trust. Council members, she interjected, I request permission to speak as a neutral medical observer. Speaker Dexron nodded. The council recognizes Dr. Chen. Sarah stood aware that her next words could determine the future of interstellar relations. During my treatment of Kethvar, I learned something important about both our species. When we act from fear, we create the very dangers we seek to avoid. When we act from understanding, we discover possibilities we never imagined. She gestured toward Kethvar, who remained seated but watched her with obvious attention. This individual survived a pirate attack, was brought to our station barely alive, and was abandoned by every medical professional except one. Yet he showed no aggression, no hatred, no desire for revenge. Instead, he showed gratitude and offered knowledge that has already advanced our understanding of xenobiology. The chamber was completely silent as she continued. The choice before us is not about whether the Vorthak are dangerous. Every sentient species can be dangerous when threatened. The choice is about whether we want to live in a galaxy where we automatically assume the worst of each other, or whether we want to build something better. Fleet Commander Jekthal's voice resonated through the chamber's speakers. Dr. Chen speaks wisdom that my people would do well to hear. We have grown bitter from centuries of conflict, suspicious of every peaceful gesture, quick to assume hostile intent. Perhaps it is time for us to choose hope instead of fear. Councillor Dexron looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives. The council will recess for deliberation. We will reconvene in 1 standard hour with our decision. As the council members filed out to their private consultation chambers, Sarah remained with Kethvar in the main hall. Through the massive windows, they could see the Vorthak ships maintaining their positions at the edge of the system, waiting for word of whether their representative would return safely. Are you hopeful? Sarah asked quietly. Kethvar considered the question carefully. I am cautiously optimistic. Your species has shown a capacity for courage that mine has forgotten. You stayed when others fled. You spoke for understanding when others spoke for conflict. Perhaps that courage is what the galaxy needs to break free from old patterns. And if the Council decides against peaceful relations, then my people will retreat to the outer reaches of space and the galaxy will continue as it has for centuries. But I will carry the memory of your kindness with me, and perhaps someday, others will have the courage to try again. Through the windows, they watched as additional ships arrived in the system, representatives from various species coming to witness what many considered the most important decision in modern galactic history. The outcome would determine whether the galaxy moved toward cooperation or remained locked in cycles of fear and violence. Sarah realized that her simple decision to treat an injured patient had become the catalyst for a moment that would be remembered for generations. The human capacity for compassion was being tested on a galactic scale, and the results would reshape the future for countless species. In 1 hour, they would know whether the galaxy was ready for peace.